Well, there's some interesting news about what's shaping up to be the most hyped game coming out next year. Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 coming from Warhorse. Kingdom Come Deliverance was a great game. I didn't play much of it just because I simply didn't have the time at the time, and I would love to get the chance to go back and replay the game, but we'll see if that ever happens. But Kingdom Come made its mark by being one of the most historically accurate games to date, really putting very little gameage into the actual game, focusing instead on realistic combat that is, well, hard, because it's hard to use a sword. It had a lot of things that were really focused as much as possible on realism, instead of trying to break the game or trying to... It made it very difficult to tell that you were a video game character, and instead it wanted to look like you were just a person, which is something that you don't get a whole lot of in games. But Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 is having a bit of a questionable mark. First, the director behind it has been making a lot of pro-Gamergate sentiments that are shared by a lot of the audience and not very much of the people critical of said audience. But at the same time, there's a little rumor coming out that the game is going to have an unskippable gay sex scene, which has me raising a couple eyebrows more than I have. And I'm not really sure why they would go about this route of putting this in. There's some ideas why they could think about it, most of them going back to just Game of Thrones, but also I'm worried that there are some people who are jumping ahead on conclusions given everything we know about Warhorse. For those of you who do not recall, Warhorse, the company behind Kingdom Come Deliverance, was heavily accosted back when the first game was announced because it is set in medieval Bohemia, meaning that there are no people of color. Everybody in this movie or game is white. Now, of course, you've got Poles, you've got Germans, you've got Jewish people, but they're all white skin. So to the racists, it doesn't matter because all they see is skin color. Even though in reality, there are several different groups of people. Now, they were demanded. You don't have proof that there were no black people in medieval Bohemia, so you should add a couple just to be safe. But the company stood firm. According to all of the sources that they had during the time period this game is set, there were simply no black people. And if there were, well, we probably would have heard about it because the people who had never seen a black person before would write about it in their journal or something. There'd be sources that suggested there were. So this is a game that is heavily rooted in the culture war, as it was a part of Gamergate 1 and is now a part of Gamergate 2. So given how much they haven't fully endorsed themselves into the culture war by going after many of these far-left corporations, insulting them for really stupid choices, and limiting a bunch of things, or just completely shitting on the core audience, it's really confusing some of the news that's come out in recent days. As reportedly, there is a scene that is causing the game to be banned in Saudi Arabia, which is an unskippable gay sex scene, and this is causing all of the opinions to come out. Now, this is a rumor, it's not confirmed either, and this is the article I'll be reading is of course from someone who has a very strong political bias, aka John F Trent over at That Park Place, who almost guaranteedly thinks gay people are utterly evil in every way. And I'm not just saying that to straw man or poison the well, it's what he has stated. And to be very clear, I am bisexual, I'm not straight, so this will be a very weird video, because I generally agree with John F Trent, except for when he gets all high and mighty on religion. So I'm not sure where this goes, so let's find out. Rumor, Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 to be banned in Saudi Arabia for unskippable gay scene. A new rumor alleges that Warhorse Studios' upcoming release for Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 will be banned in Saudi Arabia for an unskippable gay scene. Saudi Arabia news outlet VGA4A. You know, real quick, something I've noticed with all John Trent's articles that makes no sense to me is why is it that he always has the title and then always repeats the title one line down? And why is it that I always read it and never pick up on it? But either way, Saudi Arabian news outlet VGA4A reported on X, urgent and official, Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 banned in Saudi Arabia due to unskippable gay scene in story mode. Here's the post translated from Arabic. In an article on the outlet's website, it stated, "It seems that the picture has become clear now, as the fate of the game will be to be banned from publication in the region." The article added, "The game has been banned in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia because it contains an immoral scene that promotes hidden agendas in video games." Furthermore, it noted, the source also indicates that the game developer refused to release a revised version specific to the region, which led to the ban decision. So based on everything we have, it is kind of both of these things. I mean, first of all, it is a hidden agenda if you're hiding it in there and refusing to make it public knowledge in such a way that you might deceive people into buying the game not knowing it's there. And then also at the same time, I have to appraise Warhorse for, if it is there, for refusing to take it out purely because they're being strongholded by a bigoted government. A government where, if I was over there, I'd be tossed off of the nearest roof. And if I sound usually like an SJW in this video, I apologize. You do have permission to throw me off a roof for that. Now, but that unreasonably long and too many character-worded headline or news site isn't the only place reporting on it. From SaudiGamer.com, they've also reported that Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 has been officially banned in Saudi Arabia, and the reason seems to be a sex scene between two people with no ability to cancel or override the scene. And as we've learned, it's more than a minute long. Good for him. The developer does not appear to be working on a Middle Eastern version at this time. The Kingdom of Saudi Arabia has not officially made any announcement regarding whether or not the game will be banned. I feel like it'd be kind of odd for a world government to make an official statement on a video game. I don't really know the precedence of that. I don't know if that's something that you should be expecting. The game's creative director has recently been catering to gamers who are opposed to wokeness, including homosexual acts, feminism, and transgenderism. And this is what I mean. It's really curious to see exactly what's going on here. So there are a lot of ways that I could see this being a normal thing to include. For instance, a lot of the context of Game of Thrones. But we're going to keep reading, make sure we get all the information, and then I'll give some conjecture. Back in December, he humiliated BioWare. He didn't do anything. BioWare did that themselves. By comparing Kingdom Come Deliverance to Dragon Age: The Veilguard. He wrote an 7 years old game versus recent release. And as you can see, 7,000 plays right now, 4,000 plays right now. Let's see what those updated numbers look like. Just out of curiosity. Wow, Kingdom Come Deliverance is sitting at an impressive 14,000 concurrent players, nearly 15,000. And Dragon Age: The Veilguard, well, it's doing worse than that picture. Wow, that's really bad. Only 5,000 concurrent players. A month later, he made an appearance on Fox News' YouTube channel where he claimed that developers are afraid of being criticized by Asmongold and Critical Drinker. I hope to end up on that list one day. A translation done by Reddit user Perazak reads, "Listen, I've even heard that they're big developer companies really scared of hate tubers, let's say. The kind of guys who started criticizing Critical Drinker, Asmongold, and others who started criticizing big companies." He continued, "And I thought this was so niche. Okay, he's Asmon, got a few million followers. His videos have some impact, but it's definitely not what everybody is watching." However, he then noted, "And now I found out from some people that companies are really terrified of them, and it's really having an impact. That when someone starts to critique the game and incorporate a world, that it does have an impact." And I guess one thing that he's missing here is the fact that there's a huge trickle-down event of news. So all this news started out at Vavra, went to the translator, went to Asmongold, went to someone else, got into John F Trent's hands, and then got into mine. There's a huge number trickle down. So eventually, if you think about it, it's not just that Asmongold has a few million followers. How many of his few million followers are also YouTubers who have a completely different base of followers? It's not just a few million people, it's a ton of people getting exposed through a giant web. And then from there, Vavra shared his own criticism of AAA studios and how they react to the criticisms by Asmongold, Critical Drinker, and others. And it's unsustainable how these corporations do it, considering that they've now made games that nobody wanted, and they even said it when those gamers started complaining that they didn't like it and they didn't want that kind of game, and the developers started telling them that they were stupid and that it wasn't a game for them, which is completely bizarre, that you're insulting your own customers. Well, he says it perfectly there. There's nothing to add. If you're telling someone that the game isn't made for them, they're not going to buy the game. Of course, there's also Vavra, who's been touting this game's script, claiming it's the longest script for a game ever, including Baldur's Gate 3. Well, probably because you're the only person who still prints it out on paper. I'm surprised the libs didn't freak out about this one. But here you can see the size of the script. I'm going to hope these are single-sided pages, because that's double, my lord. To which somebody asked, "I think it's tied with or one step behind Sam Lake RMD, script for Alan Wake 2. You mean that 20-hour game has longer script than a 100 hours game that has 6 hours of cutscenes alone? Don't think so." Vavra and Warhorse were also attacked by a number of game journalists back in 2018, which was the first Gamergate incident I mentioned, after he did an interview with German website GameStar where he defended the historical accuracy of Kingdom Come Deliverance game. In the interview, he said, "Probably the most serious accusation in the current debate revolves around the accusation that we're actively denying the presence of people of different skin colors or ethnicities in our game, and thereby promoting a racist worldview. That is wrong. I personally do not deny this fact, nor does Kingdom Come Deliverance limit itself to any ethnic group. Over the course of the story of the game, based on our knowledge of the historical events, there are Czechs, Germans, and Jewish residents, as well as the largest group in the game, Cumans, in German also Kipchak, a Turkic-speaking tribe from the Eurasian steppe who found their way to Bohemia at this time as a result of the migration and the displacement by the settlements of the Hungarians." So if you want to call the game non-diverse, you're kind of full of yourself because there's at least 4 or 5 different ethnic groups within the game. You're just, well, being kind of racist by ignoring the breadth of diversity within a certain racial group. to use your own logic against you. And a lot of this is a lot more from that article where he was talking about how, say, of course, the situation at the time looked more heterogeneous in some other countries, referring to the fact that there was really only a couple of racial groups or ethnic groups within one nation, and it was really only going to be limited to one racial group, particularly if that nation didn't have exposure to ports, which much of Bohemia lacked. And of course, pointing out that we have already dealt extensively with historians and historical sources while preparing for the work on the game. When the first allegations were made, I reiterated and intensified this discourse to make sure that we did not portray history in any altered form. Because of course that's what they're demanding. When they demanded they put black people in a Kingdom Come Deliverance, they weren't asking for historical realism, they weren't asking for anything other than historical revisionism. They wanted to change the perception of history and change the way history works. It's the same thing as the we was kings and shit type of argument. So they're trying to say that we was Czechs and kind of shit. And it doesn't really work out, and it's really, well, it's revisionist history, and they're trying to change the way that people perceive history. Now, according to John F Trent as well, there's no response as to whether or not Warhorse has responded to the claim that Saudi Arabia has banned the game, which is kind of curious because it makes you wonder whether or not it's actually there, since of how little confirmation we have gotten so far. Furthermore, it's unclear what the context of the alleged scene is. Pope Paul VI in Mirifica notes that the narration, description, or portrayal of moral evil, even through the media of social communication, can indeed serve to bring about a deeper knowledge and study of humanity, and, with the aid of appropriately heightened dramatic effect, can reveal and glorify the grand dimensions of truth and goodness. It's possible this scene, if it exists, could be depicting homosexuality in a negative manner. However, if this is not the case, and the depictions of the scene show homosexuality in a good light, it would be wrong and would also be massively betrayal by Vavra and Warhorse Studios that might end up ruining the company moving forward, as has been the case with so many studios over the past couple of years that have embraced and promoted woke ideology. Well, now I gotta come back and give him some B-roll because some updates have come out around this whole situation, as Hypnotic and John F Trent, the author of the article I just referenced over on Fandom Pulse, have been fighting with each other over whether or not these changes are okay. There's been a lot of discourse going down around whether or not it's okay to have gay characters in a game or not. Now, I'm not going to be honest, I'm going to be siding with Hypnotic. I like Hypnotic as a person, I like his character on his streams and his videos, and I really like his content. As you can tell, my content is styled off of his content. So it's really concerning to see that there's still more infighting when infighting is the most retarded thing a person can do. We really need to cut it out. But this is really important stuff to be fighting over, so I understand why they're going at each other's throat. It all started back all the way over here when this person, Andy Pants, says that I find it interesting people are calling Melanie Mac a leftist lately. I think supporting gay relationships in games is way more of a leftist thing to do. Usually fully agree with at Real Hypnotic 1, but I don't agree with him on this one, in which Hypnotic says I'm okay with tasteful gay relationships in games, and Melanie Mac in Razorfist says we don't want any gay shit in games. Now, Melanie Mac, people argue whether or not she's a grifter. I'm not going to say definitively, but I do think she's a bit tired. Razorfist, however, I find to be very fun to watch, even with his more puritanical side, and I have no issue with him. But this caused John Della Rose, another author who used to work over at that Park Place and now works at Fandom Pulse, coming in saying people going full cancel pick on people like Melanie Mac for saying gay is degenerate, and we don't want that is insane. And then they're trying to say they're being anti-woke in the process. It's double insane. The whole reason this movement exists is to fight against this gay shit. No! John, you seem great, no shade, you're wrong. That is not the case whatsoever. First of all, Melanie Mac is acting like a leftist by having something she doesn't like and then kicking her feet. Well, okay, sorry, she's not actually doing that. That's not what Melanie Mac is doing. She isn't kicking her feet and screaming, she's just saying, I don't want it. But people like you, John Della Rose, are kicking your feet and screaming. And people aren't trying to cancel Melanie Mac. No one's saying that you have to unfollow her. No one's trying to get her thrown off of shows. There are people just who have disagreements. The audience is fickle. You are not entitled to your audience. And if you piss your audience off, then they have every right to leave your ass. And then, of course, the movement isn't about fighting gay shit. The whole movement is focused entirely around getting politics out of games. And while queer is an inherently sexual thing, just having gay people or even just gay scenes is not an inherently political thing to do, and there's nothing really wrong with that. I mean, there are a lot of games that I would definitively say are not woke, in which you can have gay sex in it. Now, there is a bit of a question about being mandated gay sex, but gay sex alone is not the problem. To which Hypnotic says very similar things. One, that's not what she said. Two, no one is going full cancel pig on her, especially not me. If people feel one disagreement means going full cancel pig, then I guess oink oink. Three, the movement exists to fight against the agenda-oriented shit, not just gay agenda-oriented shit. And that's the other thing. The agenda that they're pushing into all these games is far bigger than just gay. It's racial, it's class-based, it's trying to push in communism over any other system, it's trying to destroy the nuclear family, it's trying to destroy heterosexuality, it's trying to destroy all of these things. If you're only here about the gay thing, what are you doing on this side if you ignore all of the other problems? Because there are a lot of them. Gay is just one of the small segments. It's so much of a bigger issue that they're really ignoring the core issues. But John Deliverance comes back. A lot of people are going full cancel big on her. I'd love some substantiation. I am sure you're not, but please don't pretend people aren't. Gay is the agenda. It's degenerate. If it's gay, we don't play. If you want to have that stance, that's fine, but gay isn't the only agenda. That's not the only thing going on here. There are many other sections. To take some of their language, this is an intersectionalist issue. It is the entire cascade of the mafia of LGBT, race, feminism. It's all of it put together. So it's not just gay. And there's also the fact that you're saying that people are going cancel pick on her. I haven't seen, now of course it might exist, but I haven't seen anyone, particularly not anyone of influence, demanding Melanie Mac be taken off or barred from shows. That's not happening. Melanie Mac is making her line in the sand clear, and people are responding accordingly. Cutting your alignment with a creator is not the same thing as canceling them if they say something you don't like. They are not entitled to your audience. Hypnotic then proceeds to try and really expose John Deliverance for being kind of hypocritical on this front, and he does a pretty good job, leading to Rosary Warrior, John F Trent, author of the article we just read, coming in and responding with this thing. I don't even know what it is. I'm not going to bother to look at it, but it's something how Catholics, there are distinctions between material and formal cooperation with evil. And then Hypnotic gives a great breakdown of that argument, basically saying that by paying for companies to do something, you are affirming what the company is doing, but it's impossible to not affirm because there's nowhere else to spend your money. Hypnotic does a great breakdown as to why he's being hypocritical here, basically pointing out that if your stance is so strong that you can't support anything with DEI in it, then you also can't support anything that is funding to DEI, such as John Deliverance saying he plays Mario Kart, pointing out that Nintendo is sending money to DEI corporations. And he does this with a nice little thing here about how if a company that donated to Planned Parenthood, you'd be materially supporting Planned Parenthood in a remote way, but not formally cooperating with them as you would if you made direct contributions to Planned Parenthood. Formal cooperation with morally evil endeavors is never morally justified. Unfortunately, you will likely find boycotting business with any supportive connection to the same-sex marriages rather difficult because many secular businesses accommodate such relations in their benefit plan. He does put marriage in quotes, which I'm okay with because there's still the debate as to whether or not gay marriage is a real marriage because it's not between you, your partner, and God. And then John F Trent does an appeal to authority. Imagine thinking you're smarter than the church created by God himself. To which Hypno responds, I never said I was smarter than your God. I am simply asking a question to someone that you link to me. Try not to get angry over it. And it's just a constant argument the entire time. And it's really a dumb argument. It's not something that matters so much. It's not something that needs to be such a big deal. And people really need to calm their tits. There's no need for any of this kind of infighting, especially because we don't have information yet. And also, John F. Trent continuing to go down the moral panic route instead of actually dealing with any kind of potential substantive issue is one of the many issues wrong with this entire movement. There are some people in here who have decided that now that they've gotten the stuff that they hate out of the way, they get to really push into their personal problems instead of what's actually a danger. I'm sorry, John F. Trent, but my existence isn't a threat to your games. But this is a story that's currently unfolding, so we'll see how this plays out. Sorry to come back and interrupt the video, but back to the A-roll. So there are a lot of issues with this line of thinking. Admittedly, John F. Trent, not the greatest person at writing things, no offense to him, he sounds like a great guy, and I know people who know him. But the point of the fact is, gay doesn't immediately equal woke. Just because there's a gay character doesn't mean the game is immediately woke. Just because there's a gay sex scene doesn't mean it's immediately woke. And I'm not even going to say that it has to be in a negative portrayal. But what just makes sense is people generally don't like pointless sex scenes, particularly one you have to skip. So the only way I can conceive of this being in there is if you have two politically important characters who realistically should not be doing the hokey pokey together, doing it sort of like how we had the gay sex scenes in Game of Thrones with the stag guy, I don't remember his name, and how he had to hide his homosexuality from the rest of the world, but everybody knew because he wasn't really good at hiding it. I imagine the story is probably going to be something like that, and well, we'd be ridiculous to say that there was no gay sex back in the Middle Ages or during ancient Bohemia, because there were frequently people being killed for it back then, and so I imagine the game's going to wrap something around like that, but I really don't understand why it would be an unskippable cutscene if that's the case, and I really don't understand the point of putting it in there. And then, of course, that very last part from John F Trent, where he said that if this is true, this could bury Warhorse Studios and Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 forever. Because not only is it that it's being included, it's because through lies of omission, through omission, we are being lied about it. He pretended to be on our side and then betrayed us if it is actually an instance of wokeness. This is him going back on his laurels, this is him betraying us, and this is him lying to us. Even if not directly, it is still a lie of omission. So I hope the game's going to be good. I liked Kingdom Come Deliverance 1 from what I played of it. I just got past the main tutorial, and don't think that's not a lot of time. The tutorial took me, I think, 5 hours to beat, because it's not really built like a tutorial. But that's pretty much all I've got. Let me know down what you guys think about this, and I will see you guys on the next one.